The I-70 doubleheader goes to the Royals in convincing fashion. Why the Cardinals could learn a thing or two from what Kansas City did to them on today's crossover episode of Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Cardinals fans and Royals fans. I'm JD Hafron, and I'm a national radio sports anchor, born and raised in the Louvre, and a lifetime Cardinals fan. And I'm your host for Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can follow me on Twitter X at JD Sports Radio, as well as the podcast at LO_Cardinals. Representing our brothers from another mother over in Kansas City is Locked On Royals host Jack Johnson, who you can also find on Twitter X. He's available at JohnnyJ_15. We want to thank those of you who make Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Royals your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment and interact with us, and hit that notification button so you know when the new episodes are posted. This episode of Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Royals is being brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. So check out Booking.com for your stay today. All right, we want to welcome in for the Cardinals fans who have never seen Jack before or met Jack. If you haven't hopped on over to Locked On Royals yet, Jack, welcome in and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and why you're a part of this Locked On Podcast Network. What is it about the Royals that got you involved?
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I was born and raised here in Kansas City, and I currently work at our local radio station here, one of them, that Sports Radio 810 WHB, do some hosting, co-hosting, and producing over there. And about, a year ago, around this time, I got approached to do this podcast, which I immediately jumped on because I would say even more so than any of the teams I root for, the Royals have always been front and center to me. I've been a big baseball guy, grew up playing baseball, played it throughout my entire life. And there was no other opportunity that sounded better than this than for coverage of the Royals every single day. And that's not always been easy. This is uncharted territory a little bit over the last half decade. Last year wasn't as fun as this one's been, but in baseball, it can always change. So you can never take that for granted.
Now, I've seen a couple of games at Kauffman Stadium over my years, and always a nice trip over there. Haven't yet got to see a Chiefs game at Arrowhead, which is something I plan on doing at some point in my life. But let's stick to the baseball stuff today. Royals sweep the doubleheader on Wednesday, which, there's supposed to be two games separated, but because of the rain in St. Louis, make it into a doubleheader. And the Royals take it 8-5 and 6-4. Both very entertaining games, which much to the chagrin of Cardinals fans, both of them go to the Royals. But that was the kind of baseball I like to see. It was good, clean games for the most part. And you saw action. You saw some good pitching. You saw some bad pitching. You saw some offense. You saw power. You saw some stolen bases. There was a lot going on in this series, which made it actually a lot of fun to watch, despite the final score for the Cardinals side of things. In my opinion, just watching it, the Royals just look like a better all-around baseball team. I want to start with game one here. What were your takeaways from what you saw, considering, the Cardinals jump out to that 3-0 lead, and, and everybody in St. Louis were like, we got this. Big Brother's going to take this one. And then the Royals, really show no quit and end up jumping back into things and, run away with it actually in game one. And I was texting you and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like, it kind of caught me off guard that the Royals were able to come back in this one. What were your thoughts about how they were able to react after being down 3-0?
Yeah, pretty shocking. I think against a team like St. Louis and on the road, from time to time this year, the Royals had shown that tenacity in coming back. They had an 8-run deficit get erased in a game against Seattle, and that was their most notorious comeback this year. And a couple other times, one being against San Diego, they were down 11-3 in the ninth inning, and Nelson Velasquez had a ball that died at the wall that would have tied the game. So they had shown this year they can come back from 3-run deficits, 4-run deficits, and 8 and 9-run deficits at times. But it had been a while since they had done that, and especially on the road. They were coming off a series in Colorado in which they scored 3 runs in the first 2 games of that series against Kyle Freeland and Austin Gomber. So it wasn't like they were rolling in hot to this series. And I had wondered, with the back-to-back off days, Monday being a traditional off day and then Tuesday getting rained out in St. Louis, was it just being flat, right? It's a day game. It's a doubleheader. Alec Marsh hadn't been great over his last 6 to 7 starts. And, it's the 3rd inning and the Royals have 1 hit and it was kind of a bloop by Hunter Renfroe. I didn't have much confidence at this point. But as I said, with the comeback portion of this team, when they strike like that. Like it's 3-0, and all of a sudden it's 4-3. It's not a 3-0, then 3-1, then 3-2, then 4-2, then 4-4. It's pretty suddenly, and the runs come in bunches. I mean, they can really kind of have the train start when it's just, kind of like what they did in 14 and 15, just single, one guy, clears the bases with a double. And I think that was the perfect game they needed in game 1, because the Cardinals, of course, as you are very aware of, been one of the best teams in the National League of late. So it wasn't like they caught somebody at a great time. They were playing poorly. That's kind of all the things that came together is why I wasn't too confident. But in baseball, you never really know.
Yeah, and you mentioned starting pitch for the Royals, Alec Marsh. The Cardinals jump on him with a couple of dingers, and it looks like things are going to spiral out of control. And then all of a sudden, he just locks in, and I believe it was 15 in a row at one point that Cardinals batters were retired. Did you notice anything that he was doing differently, or that the Cardinals hitters were doing differently, that all of a sudden it just was a complete 180 where it looked like they were seeing and smashing everything to just nothing, and he just shut them down?
There was one start I remember this year from Alec Marsh. He gave up 1 hit over 7 shutout innings against the Yankees. And in those final 3 innings he was out there against St. Louis, it looked a lot like that, where the hitters were helping him out a little bit. He's got a firm fastball, and he's got a pretty good sweeper and a curveball he likes to use in 2-strike counts. Nolan Arenado pounded one of the curveballs that stayed up in the zone earlier. And that, to me, is when he spirals, which is why when it was 3-0, I'm going, when he gets tagged early, it's going to start spiraling in the 4th and 5th and 6th inning. And you kind of hope he can save the bullpen a little bit, because you still had one other game that night. So What changed for me, I thought he was a lot more aggressive and almost looked like he pitched a little bit more comfortably. Like it was a 3-0 deficit. It's, hey, at this point, my focus is on keeping this team in the game rather than holding on to a lead. Maybe he had confidence that the offense was going to turn things on at one point, but you could see him pitching with a lot more confidence. He was living in the zone. He was setting up those 2-strike pitches low and away that was getting Cardinals hitters to swing at it. And that's when he's going well. He can get 7, 8, 9 strikeouts every other outing or so, but it'd been a long time since he'd done that, because I thought in his last 3 or 4, he was nibbling a lot, falling behind 2-0, falling behind 2-1. And we saw that in the first 3 innings of this, but after he fell behind 3-0, he got that aggressive mentality back and started to pound the zone a little bit more.
Yeah, and you could say the exact opposite about what happened on the Cardinals side with Andre Pallante, who comes out dealing. And through 4 innings, you're like, all right, here we go. Pallante shutting it down. And then in the 5th inning, things just kind of blow up in his face. And you go and you look back at the box score now, and you see that Pallante lasted 6 in the 3rd innings and Marsh last 6. But when it started the way it did, you didn't think that was going to be the case, that Marsh was going to be gone long before Pallante was. And you mentioned Marshy striking people out, 8 Ks against the Cardinals, only 5 for Pallante. And it's something that I noticed about the Royals offense, which it's something that I've harped on about the Cardinals all year, is the strikeouts are just maddening. The amount of strikeouts that the Cardinals hitters will put up each and every day. And I understand that sometimes, pitchers are just good and you're going to strike out against these guys. But something that I did take away from those 2 games was the Royals put the ball in play a lot more than they strike out, and it leads to a lot of good things happening. You saw a lot of sac flies. You saw people getting moved over in the right situations. And on the other side of things, you see the Cardinals striking out in situations like that. And it's been a problem for them this year with runners in scoring position that they just don't put the ball in play enough. Nolan Gorman and Paul Goldschmidt, who are two of the big thumpers in the Cardinals lineup, strike out 9 times yesterday. 9 in the 2 games. Like, that's just something that you just cannot have in, especially about 2 guys that are, in major positions in your lineup. Paul Goldschmidt batting cleanup. I mean, Cardinal fans were killing him yesterday. Like, why is he still in the 4-hole? What are we doing? This guy keeps striking out left and right. He's on pace to set a way new high for his career in strikeouts for the season. So something maybe Ollie's going to tinker with down the road. And, he did it with Arenado where he moved him down in the lineup to number 6. And maybe that's something that'll happen with Paul Goldschmidt. So we'll find out. I want to talk more about game 2. Want to talk about where these teams go from here. And, of course, we're going to get into some trade deadline talk with both teams in playoff contention. So I want to get some thoughts on what Jack thinks the Royals might do at the trade deadline. So we're going to get into all of that on this Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Royals crossover episode. Remember the first day of school, or say the first day at a new job, and you'd be wearing that brand new outfit that you picked out, and you're feeling all good about yourself. You got some confidence as you walk in through those doors. Well, did you know that you can get that instant confidence boost back with our friends at Stitch Fix? And get this, Stitch Fix is going to give you a stylist. Jack, we get stylists from Stitch Fix. They're going to hook us up. That way we don't have to make the decisions, because clearly, if we need Stitch Fix, your taste probably not that good. So they're going to help you out. They take in consideration your style. They're going to take into consideration your size, whether you're a larger person or smaller person, thin, whatever it may be, muscular. Also your budget, which is very important. And then they're going to do the shopping for you. They're going to pick out all the stuff that they think you're going to like. They'll browse it for you, and then you make a decision on whether or not you want them. You can order things when you want and how you want with no subscription required. And with summer here, obviously a different level of clothing, humidity in the Midwest, in Missouri, between Kansas City and St. Louis. We're all familiar with it. So make sure you upgrade your closet sensibly with our friends at Stitch Fix. And if you don't love something, you can send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges, they're always free. So style that makes you feel as you look. Now's the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB. They're going to give you $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids fixes. Here on Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Royals, we pride ourselves in giving you the latest news for your team, whether we're talking about the offseason, the MLB draft that's coming up here real soon, spring training, obviously very important, playoffs, which both of our teams are in contention for. We're going to get to that here momentarily, but it's year-round, right? So you know what else is year-round, sadly, is collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS just goes away, sits on the sidelines until tax season starts up next time around. No, they keep coming. The IRS can garnish your wages, they can levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. So don't let the IRS target you. Just let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. Now, I've got multiple jobs. I'm sure Jack's got plenty of them. We're both in the radio business as well. So we've got probably some unique tax situations, different amounts coming and going from different spots. So it gets confusing. And that's where a place like Tax Network USA can come into play for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. So whether you owe the taxes, whether you got complicated matters that require more tax planning, what if you're somebody who likes to do the gambling and you finally hit that parlay this season? You need help correctly filing, so don't get in trouble with them for that. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/locked-on. And be sure to mention Locked On Cardinals or Locked On Royals at checkout, and you'll receive a $250 discount off their services. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume because of all of the shouting? Well, then make that switch to Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel, and it's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis. You'll get the opinions. You get the news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. So no matter what your schedule is, it'll be there for you. Or you can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Cardinals' hometown broadcast as their homestand continues this weekend against the Cubbies with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Cardinals. And thank you for making Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Royals your first listen every day. Leave your comments on YouTube as well as on Twitter X anytime you want. That feedback always welcome and encouraged. I'm JD Hafron from Locked On Cardinals. We got Jack Johnson from Locked On Royals talking about game 2 of this series where, once again, Cardinals show a little pop early on. Lars Nootbaar just coming back from the IL, hits the home run, and Cardinals are off and running. You're thinking, all right, here we go again. All right, we're fine. And then the Royals are like, stop it. And they just kind of take off with things. I can tell you this much. Whatever the game plan is against Salvador Perez for the Cardinals, stop it. Rip it up. Throw it away. It sucks. It's terrible. He's amazing, and I get that, but holy crap. I mean, the bomb he hit in game 2, I don't know if it landed over in your neck of the woods, Jack, or what, because that our left fielder, Brendan Donovan, had no idea where it went. It went so far over the concourse, like just an absolute bomb. Tell me what it's like having a guy, a thumper like Salvador Perez at this point in his career, still doing the things that he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the main reasons why the Royals are 8 games over 500. I mean, they're 5 games off of where their total was last year. It's one of the biggest turnarounds that, we've seen here in Royals history. And yeah, Bobby Witt Jr., Seth Lugo, Cole Reagans, they're going to get the talk, right? But Salvador Perez kind of drank from the fountain of youth. I mean, he's a 34-year-old catcher. I've always brought up that his size, like in the end, was going to deteriorate his play. I mean, he's 6'4", 250, 260 pounds. It's hard to go behind the plate every single day at that size. And the Royals know that a little bit, and they've moved him to first base from time to time. But I go back to 2019. He missed the entire year with Tommy John surgery. And then he had the COVID year, which he only played 37 games of the 60. That, to me, is why he's able to have this offensive resurgence late in his career, because he had almost 2 years off. I mean, he had a year and a half at least off, only getting 37 games over 2 years. It allowed him to rest his body, and now we can see in hopefully a playoff push, a Salvador Perez that we had been hoping to see the last handful of years. 2021, he had the 48 home run season. But he had a couple of down years and also years where he missed a lot of playing time. And to put him in the 4-hole to, find that power again, I'm still in awe that, at his age, I mean, 34 is not that old, but, 34-year-olds aren't really hitting 450-foot bombs at 112 miles an hour that much. So as a Royals fan, I mean, he's going to have a statue out at Kauffman Stadium one day. He's one of the most beloved Royals of all time. And to see him still play like this, to get the nod to the All-Star game, it's a really cool thing here. I mean, yeah, Bobby Witt Jr., we love to see the future of this team, but to have the past and the present and the future with this team, Salvador Perez being a big part of that, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, and specifically after, last year was a terrible year for both of our teams, but there was a lot of chatter that, is it time for the Royals to move on from Salvador Perez? Should they trade him now while he's got some worth left? And what does he do this year? He just comes out and mashes. And it's one of those cool things as somebody from an outsider's perspective to see a guy, we had Yadier Molina all those years behind the plate for the Cardinals and, never went anywhere else. And it would be odd to go see Salvador Perez at some point getting moved on from Kansas City. So, as a baseball fan, it's great to see the Royals progressing and getting better. That way, we don't have to see Salvador Perez wearing pinstripes or in a Dodgers uniform or wherever, whoever was going to try to pilfer him out of Kansas City. It's nice to see him. I hate that he's crushing the Cardinals, but when you guys kill everybody else, it's it's good to see. It's something that, you miss in baseball the around this time when we're talking trade deadline and stuff, and you see a lot of these guys, they don't stick around with the same cities and the same teams anymore. So Salvi to still be doing what he's doing in Kansas City, I think is a good thing for Major League Baseball. A guy that's worn a couple of different uniforms, including the Cardinals, was your starter yesterday in Michael Wacha in Game 2. Thoughts on Michael Wacha? Because on the Cardinals side of things, because people were like, oh, look at Wacha owning the Cardinals. And I didn't see it that way. I thought they hit Wacha pretty good. And there were a lot of balls that just kind of died at the warning track that might have been home runs in a lot of different ballparks. I saw a lot of line drives just going right at other Royals players. And it seemed like there was a little bit of bad luck going on for the Cardinals. But what were your thoughts on what Michael Wacha showed you yesterday and how you feel about him overall this season with the Kansas City Royals?
Yeah, Wacha was not missing many bats yesterday. So anybody that thought that he was carving up the Cardinals, I don't know what game you were watching, because yeah, he did get 15 outs in the game. They were loud. Those 15 outs were very loud, and there was a lot of times that I thought the ball was going to leave the yard. One of my good buddies, David Lesky, who covers the Royals well, he had brought up a stat last night of like balls that were hit over 350 feet. And I'll just say there were a lot of balls that were hit over 350 feet. And, it was surprising because Michael Wacha has been fantastic over his last 7 or 8 starts. He's having a, carbon copy, 2000 or comparison to his 2023 season, in which in April wasn't very good. ERA was in the high 5.5s. And then he had like 7 to 8, maybe 9 starts in a row where it was just pumping out quality start after quality start. His velo was up. Even last night, he hit 95 and 96 a few times. He's been a fantastic addition to the Royals rotation, and which is why they're second in the American League in quality starts this year, because, Seth Lugo, every time he takes the ball, he's going 6 innings, and he's likely keeping teams to 3 runs or less. Cole Reagans is kind of your wow factor when you throw 98, 99, 100 with a wipeout curveball, wipeout changeup. That's going to be the eye catcher. But Michael Wacha has been very steady. And when he was out for about 3 or 4 starts and the Royals had to go with Daniel Lynch, it was noticeable. It was very noticeable, the lack of depth this team has in the rotation. And even losing a guy like Michael Wacha, who hasn't been lighting up, I think he's been a very good number 3 in this rotation. Mm-hmm. But when you lose that number 3, especially in Kansas City, there's not another good arm to throw in there and just keep the pace. Like, that's, I think, the biggest concern is if the Royals lose one of those top 4 starters for the rest of the year, an extended period, they don't have the depth to just go and eat those innings in the way that these guys have been able to.
And that leads me to what we're going to be seeing from both of our teams here in the future. We got the trade deadline coming up here in less than a month now. And it seems like a lot of teams that are in playoff contention are kind of in the same spot. We're all kind of looking for the same stuff. But I want to get your thoughts on what you think the Royals might target coming up here at the trade deadline. Who are some names maybe that you got your eye on? And we'll mix and match and see if there's something going on where maybe the Cardinals and Royals get into a bidding war for some of these guys. So we'll talk more about the futures of these two teams and what they might do at the trade deadline coming up next on this Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Royals crossover. This episode of Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Royals being brought to you by Booking.com. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities that you always secretly wanted to learn more about. And yes, we're even talking about the rival cities when on the Royals side. There's obviously Cleveland, Minnesota. I don't know to call the White Sox a rival anymore, but you got Detroit in the mix. Obviously, on the Cardinal side of things, Wrigley Field with Chicago. You're talking Milwaukee, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh. And these are some really nice cities, despite how you feel about those teams. The cities and the stadiums and the area surrounding them, they're a lot of fun when you're talking about Kauffman Stadium. Obviously, some great stuff that goes on in Kansas City if you've never visited there. And with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. All of this available on Booking.com, so you can go see your favorite stadiums and your teams play in those ballparks and in those cities with Booking.com. You just might find your perfect stay, even in your baseball's rival city. Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. And let's not forget, parents, Little League tournaments. Jack, you were talking earlier, you've been playing baseball all your life, same way for me. And you go on these tournaments and you're constantly in different cities and different hotels, and mom and dad are paying for it all, and they got to book all this stuff. And Booking.com can become very, very useful for situations like that as well. So the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. So book today on Booking.com on the site, or you can go into the Booking.com app. Now, going to baseball games in St. Louis and Kansas City, it's tradition. And when you want to make that trek to Ballpark Village and then Busch Stadium to cheer on the Cardinals, or you want to go to Kauffman Stadium to see the Royals, when you need tickets to these games, you got to look no further than the Game Time app. I don't know why else you would be looking anywhere else. Game Time app is what I use. It's what got me in the second row for the series against the Reds just a week ago, and at very minimal cost compared to what they were going to cost. Normally, Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster, makes it easier. Prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down closer you get to first pitch. They got killer last-minute deals. They got the all-in prices. You can view what your tickets are going to look like. You get the seat view right there, so you get to know exactly what you're in for when you get there. And they've got the lowest price guarantee. So you got those flash deals where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. They got the zone deals where you can save even more when you choose a certain section and let Game Time choose the seats. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry with their Game Time ticket coverage. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB. We'll save you some money, $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code. It's LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Jack Johnson from Locked On Royals, JD Hafron from Locked On Cardinals. All right, so what's on tap for the Royals? Cardinals got the Cubbies coming in. It's a 4-game series this weekend at Busch Stadium. They're going to do a doubleheader on Saturday. Luckily for the Cardinals, they won't have to face Shota Imanaga or Justin Steele. Justin Steele set to pitch against the Orioles today. Imanaga shut down the Orioles on Wednesday night. So what's on tap for the Royals? Where do you guys go from here?
Yeah, one of the biggest series of the year coming up this weekend. They'll be off today. Then they'll head off to Boston to take on the Red Sox at Fenway. And for a lot of Royals fans that have been listening to me, the Red Sox are the team that I think you got to eyeball as for that final wild card spot. Of course, Houston with their playoff pedigree, they're right on the Royals' heels. But, you know, they play later tonight against Oakland, Boston, that is. But they're only a half a game back or ahead of Kansas City in the wild card race. So the Royals yesterday gained 1.5 games in about 9 hours on the wild card spot because the Red Sox lost. So big time series right before the All-Star break. Now hoping they take 2 out of 3 in that one.
So the trade deadline at the end of July, and because of the 3 wild card spots, there are a lot of teams that are still in the mix here. As much as I know the Royals and the Cardinals, it looks like we're probably pretty safe, but you never know what's going to happen. We still got a whole second half of the season to go. But they both look to be buyers at this year's trade deadline, as opposed to what we looked like last year when both of us were like, we're terrible. Let's start all over, blow it up, whatever we got to do. 1 year later, here we are. And both teams have made a big turnaround. Cardinals currently second in the wild card behind the Braves. They got the Padres on their heels right now. And then the Mets have been playing pretty good. You can't rule out the Diamondbacks just yet. You saw the run they went on last year. So what do you think the Royals are? You mentioned pitching. which is something that, everybody wants pitching at the trade deadline. But what is it specifically that you think the Royals are looking for? Because during the telecast yesterday, the one thing that they pointed out for Kansas, they were like, if there is kind of an issue with what they got going on, is maybe they lack a little bit of bullpen depth. But you mentioned starting rotation stuff in case an injury to Wacha, who's had injuries over his career. If he goes down, that there's not a lot of answers there. What are you guys looking for, and who specifically? What are some names that you guys might be looking at?
It's got to be bullpen. That's been the thing I've harped on for about a month and a half now, where you look at bullpen options. A, they're affordable because the Royals don't have a deep farm system. And B, there's so many relievers out there. I mean, there's guys that are likely available that we don't talk about a lot, and all of a sudden they're going to be dealt to some other team. And that really is the only opportunity I think the Royals can go cash in on getting some help. And they desperately need help in that bullpen. Like, when they had a 1-run lead or a 2-run lead in the final 3 innings of game 1, and then also last night, you have James MacArthur in the 9th. Other than that, it's kind of a toss-up. Like Will Smith threw in game 1. He sometimes throws there. He sometimes doesn't. Angel Serpa threw in game 2. He sometimes throws in spots like that. He sometimes doesn't. And the glaring problem with the bullpen has been they don't strike anybody out. So you have a situation of a runner at third, 1 out. Yeah, you can bring the infield in, but the Royals don't have anybody that can just go ramp it up at 98, 99, 100, blow somebody away, and then you get out of that inning. So they're going to keep their eye, I believe, on a couple of guys. One name that I've been trying to talk a little bit about because of, I think, the affordability would be kind of in the Royals' wheelhouse is Michael Kopech. He's been bad over the last couple weeks, but threw an immaculate inning yesterday against Minnesota. He's got the big-time swing and miss, can run it up to 100. He could be your 8th inning guy. Maybe he's just not a closer, or maybe he's not pitching well because he's not on a team that's very good. Carlos Estevez, I know a lot of people are in on. I once thought it'd be an option. I just think there's too many teams, and the Royals certainly aren't going to win many bidding wars. And I kind of lumped Tanner Scott in that same conversation.
Yeah.
But you could look to Oakland as well. They've got Austin Adams down there that could be affordable. Lucas Ursig is another guy I've brought up a few times. So those 5 or 6 names, I think the Royals are trying to keep their eye on. But if it comes down to 7 or 8 teams being interested, they're not going to outbid any of those other 6 teams.
Yeah, and it's a similar spot for the Cardinals where, you see the big markets, Kansas City considered smaller than St. Louis. Obviously, payroll, you can see Cardinals are willing to spend a little bit more than the Royals ever do. But, even the Cardinals are kind of like a smaller fish in the big pond when it comes to, Atlanta, the Phillies, the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, all these guys. It seems like they can come in and just take whatever they want from anybody they want. I'm hearing the Phillies are like, well, if the Cubs are going to sell, we'll bring in Cody Bellinger. And I'm like, what the hell, man? It's like, we got to add Belly to the lineup that's already got all of those stars in Philadelphia. Like, that's not fun. So the Royals and the Cardinals are both kind of in a similar situation where, all right, so the top tier guys we're probably not going to get because of the fact we're not going to outbid anybody. We aren't going to take on some serious contract for anybody else. And our farm systems at this point, there's not enough ammo in them to go and make that big splash to go get like a Garrett Crochet instead of Kopech from the White Sox. We just don't have it in us to give up what it would likely take to go get somebody like that. So we do have to nibble a little bit. And, you mentioned Tanner Scott from the Marlins, and that's somebody that obviously the big boys are going to be chasing down him too, since he's got an expiring contract in Miami. Miami's got some other names. The Washington Nationals got some names that we've talked about on the show before. Guys like a Hunter Harvey or a Dylan Floro. Some of those guys that's more of the wheelhouse of where I think our 2 franchises will be at. You mentioned some guys in Oakland that maybe you can find a nice deal on because we don't know what the hell they're doing. They're going to be playing in Sacramento the next couple of, who knows what they're trying to do with the guys they got on that roster. But I feel like the Royals and the Cardinals are going to be fishing in the same areas. And so it might come down to what either squad is willing to give up to improve this team as they head towards that trade deadline. How about bats real quick? Do you have any bats that you guys might need, or do you think you guys will stand packed barring any injuries?
I think the one thing that would really help this lineup out is having a consistent leadoff hitter. That's really come to fruition over the last month or two is because Michael Garcia, who I'm very high on, just isn't a stereotypical leadoff hitter. He doesn't get on base at a high clip. He's not been working the count as deep into games. He's not hitting for, any power anymore. I mean, he's kind of become this singles guy, but not many singles are still showing up in the box score. I mean, he's had some really, really bad stretches. So the idea has popped up of, can you go out there and acquire a leadoff hitter? Jazz Chisholm was mentioned a few days ago, when the Royals would be one of those teams that are interested. I don't think they had the capital to do that. I know Jazz Chisholm's not going to cost the world, but the Royals have one top 100 prospect in a couple of the other rankings, and it's Blake Mitchell, and he's still I think 92 or 93, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to take more than that. Another name, kind of going back to the White Sox, Tommy Pham. He's been leading off for them this year, 36 years old, expiring contract. He feels like he could be affordable just because he's only played in 50 to 60 games this year. He's played well enough. I think he'd pencil in well as a leadoff hitter. But I've also had a lot of Royals fans tell me they don't want him in the clubhouse. They don't want him punching players because of fantasy football or trying to start fights. But
hey, don't try to make shady trades. He won't bother you there.
There you go. Don't try to cross him. And hey, maybe some teams. There's a reason he's been on a lot of playoff teams, because Arizona last year, they go out and acquire him. Maybe they don't make as deep of a run if Tommy Pham's not on that team. The overall numbers are never going to jump off the page, but I think some of the underlying metrics and what he can bring from the leadoff spot could be perfect for the Royals, and also perfectly affordable.
Yeah. And again, that's another name that the Cardinals fans have thought about too. We're thinking about guys like a Tommy Pham, like a Kevin Pillar from the Angels. These are some of the guys. This is the type of tier of player that our teams are going to be looking at. And there's a few of us out there that are going to be like, all right, you guys can go bid for those big names, and we'll be down here. We'll find some pieces to just kind of add to the puzzle of what we hope is a playoff team. So it's going to be a fun couple of weeks heading towards the deadline as some teams fall off. Some other ones keep going, and hopefully for both of us, our teams continue to go into the right direction, despite what you guys did to the Cardinals yesterday. So either way, it was a fun day. Unfortunately, it was all in one day, but it was fun to see the Royals again, and we're looking forward to hopefully seeing you guys succeed down the line into the playoffs. And for everything that goes on with the Royals, make sure you guys are following Jack. He's available at JohnnyJ_15. What's the 15 stand for?
This is going to sound so cheesy, but when I created that Twitter years ago, my name's so basic. I needed a default name, so they just gave me the options. I clicked the first one, and so that 15 is just kind of random. And I tried to change it a couple years after that, and it was too late at that point. So I always tell people it was computer generated, this name. I wasn't trying to be creative or anything.
See, we got to come up with something better than that. We got to be like, that's how many left-handed grand slams you hit in your baseball career. Something like that. You got to come up with something.
I can lie a little bit. I can.
Well, thank you guys for making Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Royals your first listen every day. Again, if you haven't given us a follow here at the Cardinals channel, you can follow us on Twitter, X at LO_Cardinals, and me at JD Sports Radio. Again, Jack, it's JohnnyJ_15. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and help our channels grow. Enjoy your race towards the trade deadline. I'm sure we'll all chit-chat again here very, very soon when we have one of those trade deadline shows talking about what we've added, what we've subtracted, where we're going from here. So should be a lot of fun. So thanks for hanging out today, Jack.
Hey, anytime, man. I'm looking forward to doing this again.
All right. And thank you guys for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.